Today's episode, we got a really special guest with us, Mr. Chris Long of Longyards Storage. Chris, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Excited to be here, Robert. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The reason that I thought Chris was an amazing guest to bring on is because in 2025, we're really changing the landscape when it comes to the guests we bring on the podcast and really trying to bring you innovative thought leaders and people that are making big moves in real estate. Now, Chris is a true innovator in real estate, specifically in the industrial space, and we'll go into why and how and what he's done. But really what intrigued me about him is he's creating a new industry within commercial real estate, as we'll be discussing, and really a new kind of asset class in industrial real estate. And it's creating new opportunities. And a lot of what we've talked about here is piggybacking on stuff that's been done for decades because real estate's an old business. But again, Chris is innovating. So I think in today's discussion, what I hope you guys will take away from it is opportunity to be able to be on the ground floor and on the foundation of something that's going to shape the future of commercial real estate. So to shift in with Chris here, Chris, your journey really involves solving your own problem. You were a contractor, right? So let's talk about the problem that you faced as a general contractor and how the problem sparked the idea and the first steps to bring that idea to market.
What a great question, Robert, and thanks for that introduction.
Sure.
So it's so great. Entrepreneurs, we solve problems, and as you get better as a CEO and entrepreneur, you get more clear with how you communicate that problem, which I'll get into. But starting off as a contractor, I mean, I'm blue collar, man. Long hairs is blue collar, but I started off as a carpenter. I was working on, an air conditioners with family at 14 years old, got into the trades young. And then I took the path of real estate, bought my first house, turned into a duplex, did it again and again. And then I was like, okay, I love real estate. And at the same time, my construction company was growing, so I had tools, equipment. And the funny thing is, like, it's like this light bulb went off. My wife was like, kept coming home, and I had a 2 acre property and had tools, equipment everywhere. And she's like, Chris, but the driveway looks like a mess. Like, and I'm trying to stack everything, but every time family comes over, I got to worry about organizing it. I'm like, how come there's not a small to medium size month to month yard for contractors and small businesses, right? I don't need a 1 to 3 acre spot. I don't need a big warehouse, and I need something bigger that's a self-storage unit. How come this doesn't exist? So behold, long yards. The problem we solve is creating 2 to 20,000 square foot yards in the community for small businesses like contractors like myself. And it's not just a yard that's completely fenced in, it's a yard with power, cameras, what we call long offices, long box. So that's basically long yards in a nutshell. So anyone listening to trying to like, what's long yards? Think of self-storage, except it's instead of a box, it's a yard that the gate closes, it's private with everything you need in it for your small business.
Okay, okay. So once you figured out about this gap in the market, right? A niche that wasn't really getting any traction. Nobody had thought of this before. So what steps did you take to turn that idea into a business, into a reality?
Right. Well, it's not that it didn't exist. It was in the States to give credit, there's a few small, like I say small, there's a few people doing it, but no one was really thinking big with it. And I never saw it. So once I started kind of doing some research, okay, this is kind of unique, but I'm just a big thinker. So it was tough to get started, especially because no investors or anyone would back me. They're like, I want to develop this property and this is what I want to do. And they're all like, you're crazy. This isn't going to work. So there's a lot of innovation and just creativity and problem solving had to go to get it and get started. But I did. I bootstrapped the first location, got it going, kind of like threw spaghetti against the wall, crossed my fingers, and within 5 weeks it was leased up. And now we're expanding internationally, and that's how it started.
Yeah, so that's a perfect transition to talking about the scaling, right? Because now you've proven this concept and now you're scaling it to a multinational brand, right? So, with that said, the licensing piece, can you talk about how licensing has been a game changer for your growth and how that's allowing you to expand? And then, maybe talk a little about that multinational challenge of expanding your business and like the ins and outs of how you're navigating that.
Yeah, I'll start with the challenge part because that coming from a small blue collar world, being a contractor in Ottawa, Canada, versus now going into real estate development, franchisor while immigrating to another country, it was just like, wow. And I wanted to grow as a person and an entrepreneur. So I kind of like, like Anthony Robbins says, you want to get to the island, burn the ships. So that's what I did. And then I actually started off with franchising. And franchising has a lot of pros and cons. It's a great model. But it works with territories. But the licensing, because a lot of people have land and they're reaching out like, hey, I got property, let's do something. And so it kind of naturally led towards more of a licensing model. And then we partner with people as well on the land. So yeah, the licensing, it really, because you got to be creative as an entrepreneur. Like the problem we're solving is simple to solve, but it's hard to accomplish. And there's a lot of different people with different pain points, and you just can't have one tool and one solution. You need to have multiple solutions to solve multiple problems to create, the yard solution in either the area, because we're going after very scarce, expensive, and difficult real estate. So if you're just like, hey, I can only buy this, it's not that simple. The other part is we got approved by SBA. So that's been huge. So we're on the federal government directory, approved by SBA. So it helps with the financing, but a lot of challenges in between that we can get into. But that's pretty much how it started a little bit.
So let me just clarify with you on the licensing piece. So basically, you're able to take someone that already owns land and license them your concept, right? Like what you're doing and your Longyards plan, right? The business plan, so that they can then turn their land into a revenue generating asset. I mean, is that the gist of it?
Pretty much, you got land that you're not doing anything with, you're not sure about what to do, reach out to us. We'll do the highest and best use. We market, build it, launch it, everything, turnkey. And if you don't want to spend the money, we'll come in and we'll spend the money on it. So that's the best part. We're confident with the locate. We say no 8 out of 10 times, but the two deals that we find with the partners in the right location, we put our own money in the deals.
Yeah, so let me speak to that a bit because now I'm sure our listeners are getting pretty excited. We're talking about innovation and we're talking about like licensing plays on land. Like this is not normal discussion in real estate, right? The word licensing in the same word as real estate, unless you're talking about a real estate or mortgage license, like that usually doesn't come up. It's a
Yeah.
licensing is something you hear about in TV and media, right? And like licensing songs and artists. So this to me is a huge cross section that I don't think has really been explored. At least I don't know about it. So the opportunity that I see is that land is historically like an easy way to get your feet wet in real estate, right? Like a lot of people can see online, hey, there's land I can buy for like $5,000, $10,000 or 20, like reasonable amounts of money. You don't have to put up hundreds of thousands. So like I'm looking at it as opportunity where I can find land that maybe was misused or wasn't really getting the utility it should and turn that into a revenue generating asset using this long yards concept. But more importantly, if I don't want to do that because I'm busy, I can just partner with long yards. I can just partner with you guys, put my money in with you guys and get a piece of the action. Am I hearing you right?
That's right. So it's either you own the land, and even if you don't own the land and you like what we're doing, we created what's called the go long or go home guarantee. So what it is, you put 5 grand in, we secure your territory. So if you're looking for a deal, no one's coming in your neck of the woods until we find something, but you're not limited to your territory. And then once you find something, then we do a deal. But if you're not happy, because we give you tools, we teach you commercial real estate for 5 grand. How cool is that? We give you some of our IP, our underwriting tools, our acquisition steps. Now you're starting to understand the game. And if you don't like what we're teaching, look, in 30 days, we'll give you the 5 grand back. No questions asked. So it's a pretty solid offer. And a lot of
Oh,
people,
yeah.
they're not going back. They're like, I love what you're doing. They get it though. It's not easy to find a deal, but when you find a deal, one deal changed my life. I went from a carpenter having two small houses, the commercial property. Now the thing's bringing in over 40 grand a month. It's worth $5 million. I'm literally financially free from my first
Mhm.
location. And I'm like, okay, how do I go big with this? This is how I'm doing it. But it's not a single family home where you might cash flow 5 or 1,000 bucks a month with a bunch of headaches. No, this is
Yeah.
one big deal, and we could do it again and again and again. And that's what our partners are doing with us.
But theoretically, you find the right deal, kind of like what you did, it can literally be a retirement check at that point. Like one deal,
100%.
the right deal, and you can have a six-figure passive income coming in. Because the cool thing I love about long yards is it really is a passive real estate investment. Like there's not a lot of upkeep like there is with single family type of homes and that sort of thing. So let's talk about the transition because before you did long yards, you were in what I would call like single family real estate. two
Right.
family properties, single family homes, whatever. And like that's where most of our listeners sit right now is in their own single family, or maybe they have a multifamily home that they live, in one unit and rent out the other. I think that's how a lot of people start. But let's talk about the transition for you from that model where most
Yep.
people sit to the industrial acquisitions. We kind of touched on what sparked the shift with your need as a contractor, but how do the sectors differ between like single family, 2 unit, 3 unit properties, and then what you're doing now with the industrial with long yards?
Well, it started off, I bought my first house 2012, and then I had to save up, and then as a carpenter, I bootstrapped it and turned it into a duplex. About 3 years later, I bought my second house, did the same thing, bootstrapped it, turned it into a duplex, was renting it out. And then I was cash flowing about $1,000 a month each unit. Now, those took a long time in between, a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of stress. Anyone who's gone through a flip or having tenants with a single family home, especially if you're converting into a duplex, the permits, all the everything else. I mean, I lifted the house, I added stairs. These are not small jobs compared to long yards. I did one deal. You're literally throwing up fencing, cameras. You got to get the right land, right zoning. You got the right location, the right market. But I went from all that headache in about 5 years to clearing 2 grand a month to my first location, cash flowing over 25,000 a month. Right. And here's the best part. I have over 70 tenants, and I have less headaches with the 70 tenants than I did with my two single family homes because of the systems we have in place and because of the laws. In Canada, one of the reasons it was a painful transition is because I had tenants and they weren't paying. And in Canada, if they don't pay, they hold the cards. It can literally take 8 months just to get them to court. And if they don't show up, it automatically gets postponed. It's just favorable towards the tenants. Where here, my favorite part about this business is if they don't pay on time, my gate automatically locks them out, and then they're chasing me, and then I'm in control. So it's just a whole game changer. And so, there's so much to unpack in between that, but high level, I would never go back to residential again.
Yeah, no, I completely hear you. And I think a lot of people out there now, if they've got a couple single or multifamily homes and it's like all this work, all this capital, and I'm clearing, a couple $100 a month. Okay. That's where I think a lot of investors are at. And I mean, I even think about myself. I've got a single family home down in North Carolina I've owned for like over 10 years. And finally, after 10 years, I'm at the point where like I'm making a good income from, meaning like five, six, $700 a month type of net profit. But that's like after decades of owning the property, all this appreciation, all this inflation, and now finally, like after all that time, I'm hitting like that holy grail, right? Where okay, like the mortgage is paid, everything's paid, it's completely passive, and I've got a nice chunk of money. But when I say nice, I'd have to do 5 of these to even have the equivalent of like a small retirement income. So to
Yeah.
me, I have that realization you made. Like, you're not going to get there on a 1 or 2 family property, one deal at a time. You're going to get there by finding the right asset class, like you found in industrial with long yards and what you've developed, or over a long period of time. And I don't think most people want to wait 10, 20 years to do all this. So, where we're at today, how long is it today since you did that first deal? How long ago?
I cut the ribbon October 1st, 2019 at my first location. And it took about 2 years after that. And literally, I was retired living in Florida, and my wife was a stay-at-home mom from one deal
Yes.
not long after.
That's what I'm talking about. And that's not really possible in single family, multifamily stuff like we're discussing. Like it's just not, right? Unless you're getting an inheritance where, hey, somebody's leaving you a property that's free and clear, and now you're just living off the income. Like that's the only scenario. So it's exciting to me because I think nowadays it's 2025 and a lot of people are looking at real estate like, there's no opportunity now. The prices are way too high. Or like in commercial, a lot of areas have been devastated, right? In office and retail and stuff. So where is the shining star right now? And people are searching for it. And I'm happy to say, like anyone that's listening to this is it. This is the innovation. This is the future of real estate, specifically commercial real estate. It's repurposing spaces. It's changing the way that real estate is done by taking things that were only looked at maybe for limited capacity and then turning them into a real utilization and then doubling, tripling. I think maybe even you'd admit, 8x, 10x sometimes, right? That you can do on some of these acquisitions and repositioning. So industrial is innovating like we're talking about. What trends are you seeing in the next 12 to 24 months in industrial real estate? Where do you think the biggest opportunity lies in real estate in general in the next 2 years?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely bullish and I'm laser focused on industrial real estate. And I think it's going to keep going up because, business supply and demand is, business 101. That's why multifamily, these houses, everyone's chasing them, everyone understands them, so it's extremely competitive. Where like the guys who started self-storage, they blew it up and made a ton of money before people knew it was self-storage. So I think it's the same thing for iOS. And now you have a little bit of institutional players. When I say iOS, industrial outside storage, you got big money coming in, like 500 million. You got JP Morgan playing in the space, right? They're scooping up a lot of land and they're not even doing value add. They just see the actual the asset class underneath it. It cash flow is great, but it's also a scarce commodity and scarcity creates value. And that's what industrial real estate is. So there's only so much in a lot of places. And just, if you are lucky enough to have that property in the first place, then, just by the city growing, you're probably gonna capitalize on that land. So part of the challenge of us finding the right locations is because this asset class we have to do it on is so scarce and so hard to get. I think there's a lot of different plays in real estate. I like seeing a lot of creativity. I'm in a lot of self-storage masterminds. They're doing good. But yeah, I mean, my numbers, they don't even let me present sometimes because my numbers make theirs look bad. So yeah, I'm all in on Longyards and industrial real estate. If you just look at what we do and you zoom out, you're like, I get it. This makes sense. And the numbers are even more compelling.
Definitely, definitely. So, talking about repurposing spaces, because we touched on it, kind of what Longyards does, but that's really the foundation of it is repurposing underutilized spaces. And that to me is the big focus that I see as the opportunity, like you're discussing over the next couple of years. That's where it's at. So, talk about some like innovative examples when you think of the deals that you've done with Longyards and like taking these spaces that are pretty much complete crap, right? Or like really low value and turning them into cash cows. Because that's what real estate's all about is passive income and cash flow, right? Just talk us through a couple of those deals. Let's like get excited about the opportunity.
Right, right. So there's one deal in Central Florida. This is one of our one of our first. This had 26,000 square feet of old warehouse. You look at it, this is run down, right? And it had 6 acres. So what do? We had the long yards model. And long yards is not just land. Like we're going to run the highest and best use for the warehouse, and we're going to see what makes sense. Is it flex space? Is it climate controlled self storage? And that's what we're going to do. That's what we did in this one. Bought it for around $1 million, and this is going to be worth around 7 million when it's done, and it's bringing in good money, right? So that's one example. Another one is in Texas. Corpus Christi is our next long yards location rolling out. Look, this thing with SBA, we're in it for just around $300,000, and this is bringing in like 75,000 a month, right?
Wow.
Like these are some of the opportunities. Now you don't have to go that big too. You don't need $3 million. You could do the uniqueness about my model is you could do land arbitrage. You can lease. You could find someone with land. That's why we're doing the licensing
Okay.
model. So you could be in it for 300,000, 500,000, and using SBA, that's 30 to 50,000 bucks. And now you're cash flowing for 10 years with a minimal business with minimal headache. So there's a big gap between like the barrier to entry on where you want to start, but that's what we're here for. We'll
Okay.
book the
Let me
market.
just reiterate because you talked
Yeah,
about SBA. So, one of
right.
the really cool things about this asset class and what Chris is bringing to the table with Longyards is that they're approved for SBA financing, which puts you in the game as an investor. You can get an SBA loan for like 90% of the acquisition, right? Then you only have to put up 10% and you can get involved in these opportunities because it's approved through SBA. There's not a lot of commercial real estate that is turnkey like that, right? And Chris has already kind of done that groundwork to get that going. So to me, if somebody has, like you said, 30,000, 50,000, $70,000, think about what real estate opportunities you have with that amount of money. Not really many. Okay. You can buy a single or multifamily home for a down payment. That's about it. And again, I'm talking about the market today, not 5 years ago. So, with that said, the SBA opportunity that you're discussing makes a large scale, a $500,000 deal possible with a $50,000 investment from the buyer, right? And getting involved and leveraging the money from the Small Business Administration to be able to get into these opportunities. that's so exciting because you're really buying a business, right? Longyards is a business. You're basically buying and creating like a business in a box. And again, in real estate, how often is that possible without having to go and do a full franchise, right? And that sort of thing. So this to me is a great in between there. Now, because of the innovation and everything you're doing and you're having success, you're going multinational, you're going across the pond, right? So talk about entrepreneurship for a second and what it took and what it's taking on a day to day to like navigate international business and expand this company because it's something I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there they just shy away from. There's so much that could go wrong, right?
Right. Well, I think it's in my blood to kind of take leap of faith. So like even as a young kid, I was knocking on doors selling chocolate bars. And like my attitude is always like there's another door, there's another opportunity, enough no's lead to yes. So there's a mindset behind it that has to be established first, right? Like you can't jump with your feet on the ground. You got to be a little bit gutsy and you got to make a move. So and but you also have to be willing to give up the good for the great. And a lot of people don't, they live in a world of comfort, and that comfort actually strangles them from the life that they could live. So the first thing is like getting the mindset. But I always had that luckily. But now scaling, it's like, okay, how do I go from like as a founder and a CEO, it's a big gap, and they're two different things. Anyone can come up with a concept. Ideas are a dime a dozen, but execution is key. So, a few things we're doing is rolling out EOS, right? EOS is it's a great system for entrepreneurs, for small businesses. We have a small team, but keeping everyone organized, keeping the 5, 3, and 1 year vision aligned with quarterly goals, rocks, your weekly meetings. It's just one example of how you bring a small team towards the vision and the goal that you want. But also having a big vision and clarity on the vision allows you to get A players that want to get involved in the mission. They like, hey, I see this, I want to get involved. And when you have that momentum and you have that vision and you're clear to communicate it, you start creating a bit of a gravity of key players and key people that want to get around you. And like, I'm not even like advertising much. I got people reaching out to me just wanting to do business with me a lot just because of the path that we're on. When you get into our systems and software, you understand like it's really clear with how we're going, what we're doing. And that took a while though. From going to the founder, from the small blue collar guy to like, okay, how do I build this big? There was a long, long, lonely, dark gap of time just to learn that a lot of people don't necessarily get or appreciate in the entrepreneurial world. And I'll tell you, it is not easy. But that's why we want people to partner with us because we've gone through the pains, took our bruises, we've took our losses, we're still here, and we put our money in the deal at the end of the day. So in any case, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but it's been a journey.
Okay. So I mean, as far as the international stuff goes, it sounds like it was really just getting the balls to go just do it, right? And like not letting the fear hold you back. Would you say that's a big part?
Pretty much. I mean, the mindset's the biggest thing because, like, if you could do this once and you could do it a second time, well, there's nothing stopping us from doing it again and again and again. Business supply and demand 101. So it really comes down to finding a great deal. But also, and it's not just finding a great deal, it's finding a great partner and then finding a great deal with that partner. So we're not just
Yes.
finding deals, we're finding partners and then finding deals, which is why we're on podcasts like this or people are reaching out to us because our ability to scale and to get to the next level is based on this is a people game. It's human capital. It's not just our corporate small team. It's a team of people around us that we give the tools, the resources, the know-how to change their life. So that's how we're scaling. We're scaling. There's a simple philosophy, money people deal, right? You can get the deal, get the people, or you can get the people and get the deal. And whichever one comes first, we're going in that direction.
Yeah, I love it. And one thing that you mentioned there that I just want to elaborate on is the software. So nowadays in real estate, especially in like the industrial space, software is what I see making a big impact. I've been involved in some self-storage deals, and the real value add is the automated security, the completely automated software when it comes to like accessing the property, renewals, just the day-to-day things that normally have a big overhead have now been streamlined. And I think now with AI, they're going even more and more in that direction, right? Like AI security systems, etc. And I think you're just an offset of self-storage, right? I mean, Longyard is just an offset of the same type of asset class in industrial, just kind of a different use of the land, right? That's really what it is. So the software is the piece that I think you guys have and it's done and developed where it's like, yeah, they're great deals, but that is a competitive advantage. that nobody can take away from you. And I've seen the success that great software can bring, like I said, in the self-storage space. So to hear that that's where like a big part of your capital or at least investment in your company has been is like developing that, that's the future right there for sure of commercial and more specifically the industrial side. So people that are thinking about getting in, this sounds great. You know, we want to get into industrial real estate. We want to partner with Longyards. What would you say are some things that they should be looking for? What are the important factors to be looking at if you're going, okay, this resonates, like I want to get involved?
Right. It's not crazy. I mean, you obviously need to qualify for SBA, assuming that you want to use SBA, depending on your liquidity. I mean, I'm assuming most people, they have one, two houses, a good W-2, and they want to go to the next level. If that's you, then you need a pool of savings, anywhere 58,000 minimum, ideally more. You have a good credit score, you have a good W-2, and you have some assets. That's it. You're ready to play the game with that. You're starting with as little as 5 grand, and if you don't like what we offer, then you just walk away. So like it's you're not out anything. Industrial real estate is not easy. We had to create a business to then create the business, and the business on top is the underwriting tools, the roadmaps, the checklist, all the tech that we're talking about that gives you clarity. And it's not just that; it's what the lenders like, because you might find the deal you don't even like. How do you even start to underwrite it? How do you understand it? It may look simple on the surface, but it is not easy. So, I mean, we walk everybody through all of this, and it starts as simple as 5 grand. And I'd say, you don't need to feel like you need to have everything in order. We have a few people that even have less liquidity, and we're like, look, if you find a really good deal and you understand how to communicate it, and you know people with money, you will find the money, right?
Okay.
Well, you don't have to have these things. If you have a drive, like anything, we will be your partner and we will make it work.
I think when a lot of people think of commercial real estate, they think of, 20 to 50% down, right? Especially industrial, because I've seen in the mortgage industry industrial deals, and the last one I saw was like a 40% down payment just to get into the door, right? With a lender. So I think the opportunity to be able to put like a 10-15% down and get involved and create real cash flow and real income is very compelling because I don't see anywhere else to do that right now in real estate for sure. But what about syndication? Are you guys offering like any sort of syndication option where an investor can say, look, I want nothing to do with this. I just want to give you 50 grand and get a piece of your next deal at Longyards. Is that an
Well,
option yet?
yeah, we actually just opened up the doors to a safe agreement. So for a very small, limited window of time, and we also have other tech components that we're not, really going too public about, but we're working in the back end because we understand the importance of it. So there's different layers of investing in long yards. You can actually invest in the long yards corporation as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's safe agreements, different ways to do that. That's, we're only taking a little bit more of what some people say seed
So that's
capital.
like equity in the
It's like
company.
equity in the company. That's
Okay.
one way. Now the syndication, because we're doing the partnership, we're actually steering away from syndications because
Okay.
our deal sizes, like a syndication makes sense when your
For
deal size
millions and
is
millions of
millions and
dollars.
millions. Our deal sizes are smaller, and you don't need A, that much capital, and B, that many people. A
That's
syndication
a
brings
good point. That's a
a
good
bunch of
point.
money and a bunch of different skills. We have all the skills. We also have the resources. I'm Canadian, so I can't get SBA. So it's funny, my business got approved, but we need partners that are approved that are American
That makes total
in
sense.
the right territory. So how do I solve this problem? Just like an entrepreneur solving many problems, I partner with people that can get SBA. We merge long yards with them being an American, with the liquidity, also being able to manage it in their location. And that's how we're doing it. So I don't need to syndicate,
Nice.
and I don't want to syndicate, because the less people, the less headaches.
No, I get it because look, in a syndication, we're putting 10 grand times 50 people, right? You don't need that. You need 50 grand total, right? Like to get into a deal like this, plus the SBA, but as far as like down payment. So that makes sense to me as why you don't do this syndication. But I say, as we wrap up to our listeners, if you've got in that like 35 to 40 low end plus 50,000 or more, like this can work for you. You don't need hundreds of thousands to get involved with this. And I think as we see real estate continue to appreciate in the market, like 5 years from now, you may not be able to get a deal like this for 350 or 400,000, right? So you may need a lot more money down the line to do it. But to anyone that's looking at real estate opportunity over the next 12 to 24 months, I don't see a better one myself than Longyards, and specifically the innovation in commercial real estate. So with that said, let's wrap up and talk about what's next for Longyards and like your next phase. You touched on partnering with investors in the US to expand this concept all over the country. Are there any upcoming projects you guys have, other goals that are set for the coming year that you're excited about that you can really talk through?
There's a few, but I can't really talk through them because we're just keeping a lot of the cards close. But we will say that, it's sticking to the basics and doing them really well. It took us a while to get dialed in with our systems, with our software, with our messaging, with getting the lenders behind us. So we're doing what works and we're doing it again and again, and we're just going to keep doing that. There are a few other exciting, things kind of brewing in the back end, but for now, it's just look, we got a great we're working on solving a big problem in the industry. Anyone who's listening that probably knows that has a family member that's been in landscaping or has had a problem getting a yard, they'll immediately identify that this makes sense and they'll be like, oh my God, how come this doesn't exist? So, we just want to, again, keep it simple, find great partners, do great deals, and keep doing that over and over again.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm really excited to see where this goes for you because being in real estate myself for over 2 decades, like we don't see a lot of innovation. We really don't. It gets me excited to be able to see that this is the future. And there are people like you that are out there that are hungry and that are creating change and creating a shift and at the same time creating opportunity. So if you can just do me a favor and all of our listeners and let us know how to get in touch. If we want to work together, what's the best way to reach out to you and Longyards?
Yeah, just go to the website, longyards.com. You can, listen to our podcast or follow. There's a few forms you can complete, fill them out, and get in touch with our team. And simple as that. You can also email me, clong@longyards.com.
Absolutely, man. Well, Chris, listen, I know your time is valuable. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us. Hopefully, we've provided a ton of value for everyone. I know, like, my eyes are so open right now to this opportunity, like they haven't been before. So, I'm going to be reaching out to discuss our partnership. But with that said, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Robert.